What's up, guys? I'm EJ. I'm joined by Kendall, and today we're going to be talking about the top guys in the 2021 NBA draft and comparing them to players current and from the past. So, Kendall, last year, I think a lot of people really enjoyed our series where we got to do comparisons for players that were entering the draft and kind of liking their games to guys that were currently in the NBA or guys that had previously played in the NBA or guys that, in terms of their games and how they played in college. So, we're bringing that series back this year. We're starting off with what, for many people, are the top five prospects in this draft. So I'm really excited to talk about these players and really get our draft content really revved up here as we're a little less than 2 months away before the names get called for the 2021 NBA draft.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it was a really fun series that we did last year. As I said last year, I think comps are very fun because a lot of scouts and a lot of draft people don't like comps, but I am a fan of comps because I feel like it gives as some people like to say, it gives the casual fan a more better idea of what type of player you're getting and what role this player may play on the next level. Um, and just to show certain players, while all of these guys are unique in their own right, um, that there have been certain archetypes that we've seen before with almost every player. Some players are going to be much tougher to identify than others, but that's the beauty of this. It's almost a challenge, and I love the challenge. So
Yeah,
I'm excited.
yeah, and to me, like, it's one of those things where look, there's never going to be a true one for one. There are some guys that play very similar, and throughout this series, I'm sure there'll be guys that we really feel like are clones of certain people. But for the most part, everybody's your own player. Nobody plays exactly the same. But I agree. I think that comps are important because when you try to think of the functionality of what a player could bring to the table on the NBA level, it's great to kind of see if you see guys who have had success on the next level in these guys, and it's not to say that if you don't, that means the guy can't play. But I think it's just great to kind of again kind of just get an idea of what kind of roles they can play when they get to the NBA team. So again, we're starting with the top guys. We'll have various different groupings when we do this series, but I want to start off with the guy that is fighting for that number one spot. He's been a consensus number one for a lot of people, but I've seen Jalen Green in that spot too. We'll talk about him in a second. But I want to start with Cade Cunningham, 19-year-old point guard from Oklahoma State. Kendall, this is going to be, I think, a little bit of a surprise. It's a little bit of a throwback, not super crazy, but it may be a surprise because it's not necessarily a guy who plays his position that he's going to play in the NBA, which is point guard. My comp for Cade Cunningham is actually Brandon Roy. Now, if you remember Brandon Roy at UW in Washington, he actually played a lot of point guard there. He was almost like their point forward. And when we think about Brandon Roy's game, a lot of times people kind of lament that he didn't get the opportunity to really be that top two guard in the NBA. You had Kobe and Wade, and it seemed like there was a lull. That spot where Roy clearly would have been, there was kind of nobody that kind of took the mantle, and then eventually Harden took that role. And if you look at Harden's game right now, he's essentially like a point guard. Like, I think the evolution of that two guard spot has changed a great deal. And to me, if Brandon Roy was coming up from UW today, they'd be trying to make him a point guard. And I think Cade Cunningham has a lot of those similar abilities, especially when you break down his one-on-one game. Neither guy is super fast or super athletic, but they're both extremely crafty. They both have excellent handles. They're both big game makers, big shot makers, and big game players. And the only thing with Cade, I think Cade's obviously his floor game and his passing and his court vision is a step above Brandon Roy. Brandon Roy was a really good passer. He was averaging about 5 assists, even in the NBA at the two guard. But I mean, Cade to me looks like the guy that could average 8 or 9 assists, maybe 10 assists a game if he really worked on his continues to improve his point guard play. But I think that in a lot of ways these guys are very similar. No, again, neither guy's really gonna beat you with pure athleticism, but they're gonna beat you with just being super smart, highly skilled basketball players that are gonna be the guys that are handling the ball with the games on the line, and those are the guys you want with the ball. So I like Brandon Roy for a comp here. What do you think?
Brandon Roy is interesting. Yeah, I know he's been a popular guy for Jalen Suggs as well, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But for me, with Cade Cunningham, I'm gonna go to a guy. I like your train of thought because I agree that I think when we're talking about a guy that's 6'7", 6'8", it's hard to find a traditional point guard. It's a new time in the NBA. I know a lot of people have thrown out Luka Doncic and James Harden. I don't know if he's got the scoring instinct and the scoring knack that those guys have necessarily. But I agree that there is another guy who was not a point guard that I would go to, and the guy I would go to is Jimmy Butler. I think he reminds me of Jimmy Butler in a lot of ways, more of a point guard than Jimmy Butler. Um, but there are times, as you see, even when he plays with the Miami Heat, where Jimmy Butler runs the floor or mans the floor for the Miami Heat at the point guard position. You're talking about a guy. What impresses me about Cade Cunningham is his defensive and his two-way upside. Obviously the passing, the size, the ability to score, the shot creation ability, finishing at the rim. Like he's almost a total package offensively, but obviously his length, his athleticism defensively is brain. He's an extremely smart player. And when you watch a Cade Cunningham game and you study the nuances of what he does on every play, he very rarely makes mistakes. And there are a lot of similarities to to Jimmy Butler when you're talking about his size, playmaking ability, his defense. He doesn't have the toughness and tenacity that Jimmy Butler has. And that's not something that's easy to get. But in place of that, he has a lot of point guard skills. I don't know if Jimmy Butler has necessarily, but he's a guy that's pretty much a unicorn. There aren't many guys. Grant Hill's a guy that people have thrown out there. Again, I mentioned Luka Doncic. I've seen Jason Tatum.
I couldn't go Grant Hill because I think Grant Hill was a superior athlete.
I agree.
Grant Hill was an above the rim player. Cade not going to do that. Jimmy's interesting. I would never have thought of Jimmy Butler. I'm going to be honest. I think that there is probably some functionality that's similar in the half court as a point guard. I think what the difference I would have and why I like my comp a little better is because I think the open court game, Jimmy's not Cade Cunningham. Like Brandon Roy was sensational in the open court, whether it was scoring or getting guys open or getting to the cup. Jimmy, that's not his game. Jimmy's a half court player, and I think while Cade and him in the half court may be actually pretty similar, especially when Jimmy's playing the one, the transition game is such a big part of Cade's game. Those advanced passes and things like that. I think that's going to be a big part of why I don't think that I could necessarily go with Butler, but it's an interesting comp.
I think people are going to really feel Cade Cunningham defensively on the next level.
I hear you.
We didn't see it as much at Oklahoma. I mean, we saw it. We just didn't.
Yeah, he was a good defender at Oklahoma State.
As much because, he had to do more for his team offensively. But I think when he gets to the next level and he's guarding, he may be the guy who guards the best player on the other team. Mm-hmm. I think people are going to see when you're guarding the best wings in the NBA, you're going to be like, man, this guy is a two-way monster. And so I think that's where I think the Jimmy Butler comp comes into play a little bit. But yeah, offensively, there are certainly some differences.
Yeah. I want to talk about Jalen Green, G League guard, 6'5", just extreme athlete, really a truly intriguing player as an offensive scorer. This was a little bit of a hard one for me, but then when I landed on the comp, I kind of feel good about it. I went with Zach LaVine. To me, again, you're talking about the supreme athleticism. I mean, when these guys get in the open court or in space, it's Sports Center top 10 time. I mean, they're that kind of athlete. But even beyond that, I even think about how we thought of Zach LaVine as a younger player coming into the league. And there's a lot of talk about, hey, is Jalen Green really a combo guard? Is he a point guard? Can you put him there? Just like I didn't think that Zach LaVine was that spot, I don't think Jalen Green is to me. To me, he is a 2. But the fact that they both kind of had handles and they can kind of create offense and initiate offense in similar ways to where in Zach LaVine early in his career, they actually played him at the point guard with the Minnesota Timberwolves, and then a little bit even at UCLA. So I think that to me their strengths are kind of the same, their weaknesses are kind of the same. Zach LaVine's filled out now, but if you remember him at UCLA or when he came into the league, he was really thin. He had to get much stronger, just like Jalen Green has to get much stronger. But I think that offensive repertoire, the deep range, the pull-up game, the attack the rim, dexterity above the rim when they get off and they're finishing around the basket, I think they're extremely similar. So I landed on Zach LaVine. I think that ceiling of, LaVine is a 27, 28-point scorer. To me, Green has that kind of potential as well.
So I agree. I agree exactly, V. But I just for the sake of giving you another guy, I'll go with someone else. Because I agree exactly, V. There's very few guys like Jalen Green that are 1% athletes that
Yeah,
also are very advanced in their offensive game, very skilled.
yeah,
I think he's more advanced than Zach LaVine was coming out, and at the same
I
age,
agree
which is
with that
why
too.
he was the number one or two player coming out of high school, where Zach LaVine was more unheralded. But
Yeah,
um, I think to me the other guy that I think you could throw out there for Jalen Green is Malik Monk. I think there are some similarities, and some may look at that and say, "Oh, so why am I going to draft this guy in the top three? Like Malik Monk." But I mean, as EJ knows, I was a huge Malik Monk fan. I mean, that was a guy that I thought should have gone in the top 3 or 4 in his draft, and I was wrong about it. I'm willing to eat crow. You're not gonna be right on everything, but Malik Monk, I think that's not a diss to compare Jalen Green to Malik Monk. I think he's maybe a slight bit more athletic. He's better physical profile, a little taller, but in terms of the shot making ability, in terms of the athleticism, um, there are a lot of similarities with him and Malik Monk. And I mean, look, if you watch Malik Monk in Kentucky, that's a guy who can get 40 on any given night. Um, Again, the scoring ability is elite. And I think similar to Malik Monk, you kind of wish that he would have a better handle. You wish he might have been a little better in isolation. Um, and he had a better ability to create his own shot. And I think Green might be even again a little further along than
yeah,
Monk, but some of those concerns are there with Jalen Green as well. So I think because he's a little bit more athletic, because he's a little taller, and he's not as good a shooter, I think, as Monk at the same stage. But because he's more athletic, he's taller. I
yeah,
think he has a higher upside and probably will be a better NBA player.
yeah.
But
I mean, when you're talking
they're
about
similar.
the difference between 6'3" or 6'2.5" to 6'5" is
Six six,
huge.
yeah,
And so yeah, I think if Malik Monk was a couple inches taller, he would have been rated as high
yeah.
as Green and probably in that top class. But so I definitely see the comp there for sure. And shout out to Malik Monk. I thought he had a really great bounce back. I guess his third year in the league now. Yeah, the early time in his career was really rough. I thought he
Year
played really
four.
well. Before, yeah. I thought he played really well for the Hornets this year, so I think he deserved that shot. I know he got injured for part of it, but when he was out there, he was really good. Jalen Suggs, point guard, Gonzaga. I've watched this guy a ton this season. This was very hard for me, and I lament making the pick because I feel like people are going to say, oh, it's home cooking, and here we go with EJ hyping the Zags. And I want to make it clear. I'm not saying that I believe this is definitely his ceiling, but when I try and think of a comp, the closest guy I could think of was Derrick Rose. Because to me, now what I wrote in my comp when I wrote my scouting report was he's not as shifty. Derrick Rose's handle was insane, and it still is insane. Suggs doesn't have the shape that Rose has, but when it comes to when they both get downhill, they are unstoppable. Like to me, like it's and their ability to again the dexterity when they get up in the air, they can finish with both hands. They can go to the reverses. Their alley oop threats, like Jalen Suggs, caught a bunch of lobs at Gonzaga this year, and the size and strength profile is similar. Suggs is about 6'3", 200 pounds. That's pretty much what Rose is now and was when he came out of Memphis. So I thought that Rose was pretty much the clear cut pick. Suggs probably projects as a better shooter for the majority of his career, slightly. Rose, better ball handler, a little more shake. But I think that the athletic profile for both guys are very similar.
Look, I mean, you heard me all year when we would talk. Obviously, you're a Gonzaga fan. I'm a Memphis fan. And I would say Jalen Suggs is a lot like Derrick Rose in terms of his impact and playing on a veteran team and being the best player as a freshman and playing on a team that would go to the national championship game. And very similarly, lost in a close, well, it wasn't that close, but lost in a national championship game. So yeah, there are some similarities to him and Derrick Rose. I'm sure next year you'll say I don't know, Chet Holmgren's Kevin Durant, but but yeah, no, I mean for me, Jalen Suggs is a guy you could throw a lot of names out. There are some similarities to Marcus Smart. There's some similarities to Chauncey Billups. There's some similarities to Jason Kidd and Derrick Rose. there's he's a very unique player that we've seen before, but not in his mold. The closest thing I could come up to was the closest guy I could come to was Baron Davis. With Jalen Suggs, Baron Davis is similar to Derrick Rose. It's not like we're that off in terms of our feelings with Jalen Suggs. I don't want to go to Derrick Rose because I mean when I think of Derrick Rose, I think of a guy who won MVP, and I don't know if Jalen Suggs. I mean, I really like Jalen Suggs. So could he win MVP one day? I think it's not out of the question. I don't think it's crazy, but Baron Davis is, I think, a guy that is still you're talking about an all-star point guard, a guy who can get to the basket whenever he wants. I think similar to Derrick Rose, relied on his athleticism a little bit more than he's not Kyrie Irving in terms of he's not gonna break you down. He's gonna use power and athleticism to get to the basket, and he has explosiveness at the rim. Also a guy that can make shots on the perimeter, but not Steph Curry by any means. The thing I have to reckon with is defensively. I think Jalen Suggs could be a similar to Cade Cunningham. I think we're gonna really feel Jalen Suggs' defensive impacts on the next level.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't know if Baron Davis necessarily had that kind of impact. So that's the one issue. Defensively, again, you throw out names like Lowry and Smart and Holiday. I think he can be that kind of. I mean, his instincts defensively. He was a cornerback as well as a quarterback defensively, and he has almost the cornerback instincts translate to the NBA more so than even his quarterback skills. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, and shout out to Jalen Suggs with just the to me just the winning plays. I mean, you watch
leader.
You watch the tape. This guy, I mean, you talk about the defense, just getting on the floor, just being competitive on that end on every possession. I agree. I think Jalen Suggs could be an impact player defensively as well. Let's talk about Jonathan Kuminga, who was Jalen Green's teammate with the G League Ignite team. I'm going to do a little bit of a throwback. I know he's kind of a modern player, so a lot of the comps I've seen have been modern guys. Your typical, 3-and-D kind of athletic 3-man. But, that archetype isn't something that's brand new. They've been guys like him for a long time now. And the guy I actually ended up landing on for Kuminga was Richard Jefferson, former New Jersey Net. Again, elite physical profile for a wing player. You're talking about 6'7", 210, 220 pounds, really strong, extreme athlete. Again, a guy who can be a highlight reel waiting to happen if he gets in the open court. And to me, Richard Jefferson was he was also a young player coming into the NBA who had an immediate impact, and I think a large part of that was his physical profile. He was really strong. He was really athletic. And Kuminga needs to be consistent defensively, but he has the profile to potentially be a very good defensive player. And Richard Jefferson came into the league as a really good defensive player. And I think offensively, I don't know if Kuminga has the Jaylen Brown offensive ceiling that people have ran to, but I think that maybe Richard Jefferson may be a little more fair. Like Richard Jefferson was a 20-point scorer for the Nets, in his prime, a borderline all-star. Didn't make one, but he could have made several. So I think that to me is how I look at Kuminga. If he gets with a point guard like Rich Jefferson got with Jason Kidd, if he gets with he's not going to be a Trae Young, but if he gets with a really exciting point guard who can get up and down the court and find him in transition.
Darius Garland.
And we're not put Darius Garland in that list either. No, but if he could get with a point guard that can get him easy shots and get him some lobs, I think that you could see a really great rookie impact for Jonathan Kuminga, similar to Richard Jefferson, who helped his team get to the finals his rookie year.
That's an interesting one. Yeah, I think that's a good comp as well. I'm going to a guy who's still playing, but it's almost a throwback at this point at the end of his time in the league. I'm gonna go to Rudy Gay. I think that there's some similarities with Jonathan Kuminga and Rudy Gay. Both Northeast guys. Obviously, I think Kuminga. The thing that stuck out to me when we talked about the G League Ignite and some of their initial games, one of the things that stuck out to me about Kuminga, and it has ever since he played in the EYBL, he played in high school, is his scoring instinct and his scoring knack, and his scoring intelligence. Like he has a pace and he doesn't like Jaylen Brown was when he was very out of control, very feel for the game kind of low. And he's developed a pace in the field that is much better than it was obviously as a young player. But Jonathan Kuminga has some of that now, and it was almost Carmelo Anthony like in terms of being able to get to his spots. But he's not Carmelo Anthony. He doesn't have the skill, doesn't have the handle that Carmelo had at the same age. But Rudy Gay I think has a similar kind of scoring ability without the skills that Carmelo Anthony had, but he has an athleticism that I think Jonathan Kuminga has that's also very similar. What I like about Kuminga, I mean, we don't know. We saw it's tough because we didn't see him play college basketball. We only saw him play with G League Ignite. It wasn't many games, so we really don't know what kind of mental makeup he's got. When it comes to someone like Rudy Gay, he didn't always lock in, wasn't always a defensive stalwart. So those were some of the issues with Rudy Gay. Kuminga, if he has Rudy Gay's talent level and he's got Kawhi Leonard's mentality, you're talking about a guy that's going to be a borderline superstar. But so I don't know. But in terms of just his talent, he's a lot like Rudy Gay. Reminds you a lot like Rudy Gay.
I think that Kuminga, the only thing I'll say is I think Kuminga, his offensive polish needs a little bit more touching up. I think Rudy Gay, to me, in terms of as a one-on-one ISO scorer, Kuminga has the framework to be that, but I think it's still a little ways away. I think in some ways you could argue maybe if he was playing against college kids, it would have looked more polished because he's playing against grown men in G League.
Look, man, I watched.
So you got to give him some credit for that.
AAU, guy was getting 40 like it was nothing.
I know.
He can fill it up. It's just it's a different kind of 40. But he's gonna get to the league, and people are gonna be surprised when he's getting 15, 16 a night.
Right. I just wonder if his early impact is more of a run and jump guy than maybe what his game has been sold, up until this point in his career. I thought the G League Ignite showed me a little bit of that. He played really well, but some of the efficiency, some of the polish as a one-on-one scorer, I think still a little bit of a ways to go. But obviously, to me, definitely a top 5 prospect here. And then last guy we'll do, Evan Mobley, center, USC, 7 feet, 220 pounds, 210 pounds. This was kind of weird because defensively, I would argue he's probably definitely a step above this guy. But I think offensively, he reminds me a lot of Chris Bosh. Leaping ability, obviously, is through the roof. And Bosh, as a younger player, was definitely a poster threat kind of guy with the Raptors and coming out at Georgia Tech. What I saw from Evan Mobley's game that really excited me was so much of his face-up game. He really likes to face up and attack his defender in the face-up position. Not necessarily the shooter yet, but remember, Bosh also wasn't a great shooter when he first got into the NBA. He had everything else kind of but the jump shot, but he was so skilled that he still was a very impactful player. And once he got the jump shot, he became an all-NBA player. And I think Mobley will get the jump shot. The jump shot is a decent.
It's already there to some extent.
Yeah, he can make that shot. It's just more about consistency, which is, honestly, when you come into young players, these draft guys, almost all of it, it's just all about consistency. But when Mobley is able to face up his defender and put the ball on the floor, not only is he a threat to score, he's also a threat as a very good passer in those big-to-big passes. Him and his brother were great. And Chris Bosh was also a really good passer coming out of Georgia Tech and early in his career with the Raptors. I'm not sure, Bosh turned into something totally different when he got to Miami. I'm not really thinking about Miami Bosh, but when I think of Toronto Chris Bosh, I think Evan Mobley's offensive game will end up looking pretty similar.
So EJ, I'm going to put you on the spot real quick. I'm going to call you out a little bit.
Okay.
So last year, you compared James Wiseman to Chris Bosh.
I know you kind of scoffed at it, but I'm going to go with Chris Bosh for his comparison. The reason why I say that is because when I watch both guys, I kind of said the same thing about both guys. And that it's rare I've ever seen big men move so fluidly on the court as those two guys move.
Mm-hmm. Well, which guy is more like Chris Bosh? Or do you think that you were off a little bit?
That's actually funny. I didn't remember I had Bosh for Wiseman.
I'm only calling you out because Chris Bosh has been the guy that everybody runs to when it's the skinny.
I know.
Skinny skilled big
That's
man.
fair. I honestly think Mobley would be more so because to me, Wiseman is more physically built, so there seems to be more. They seem to be more of a willingness, and maybe it's the team. But the Warriors didn't they wanted him to do anything but just rim run and just P&R, lob, be a threat around the
Look, man,
basket.
that's why I said
There's,
I comped him to Whiteside last year, and that's how we
right,
used.
and that's how he was used. He definitely showed flash of being able to do more, but it didn't seem like the Warriors were interested in doing any of that. I think Mobley, because he's not like Wiseman, can handle it. Wiseman is a physically strong kid. Mobley, I think it would be stupid to say just play around the basket. He's not.
Right.
He's 210 pounds. Like, it would make sense to allow him to play a little bit more on the perimeter and allow him to take bigger, slower guys off the dribble, because I think that his physical frame, I think, kind of demands it. If you're just telling him just to bang with guys under the basket, I think that doesn't help his game. Maybe if Wiseman was on a different team, I would say differently. But if you're asking me to put me on the spot, which guy I think looks more like Bosh to me, I would, even though Wiseman is the lefty, I actually would go with Mobley.
So the guy I'm gonna go with this is gonna be the way back. This is gonna be more way back than we've gone today. This is a guy that was a former number 1 pick in the draft, had injuries, so he never really lived up completely to the billing that he had coming out of college. But I believe he's in the Hall. I'm not sure, but I think he's in the Hall of Fame. Ralph Sampson, I'm gonna go with for Evan Mobley. Again, a lot of young kids are probably, who's Ralph Sampson? So EJ's gonna have to play the UVA tape, gonna have to play the Rockets tape. But look, obviously, elephant in the room, Ralph Sampson 7'4", Evan Mobley is not 7'4". So you're gonna have to make that adjustment, of course. But in terms of the functional ability, Ralph Sampson is a guy that was not. I mean, obviously, again, he was 7'4", so he really make up for it, but was not the biggest, strongest guy. I mean, he was tall, but he was not the strongest guy. Floated out on the perimeter. I was watching a game where he played against North Carolina. I believe Pete Gillen was on the call, and he kept telling him to go into the paint. Like, why does this guy keep shooting jump shots? He was making the jump shots. I'm like, nowadays it would sound ridiculous to tell the big guy who can shoot threes to stop shooting.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, Ralph Sampson was Kristaps Porzingis before Kristaps Porzingis, and I think Evan Mobley, and then when he got to the NBA, like, I mean, he was still very good, but it wasn't wasn't as dominant as Wilt Chamberlain or somebody, or Kareem, those guys who were really dominant in the post. And I don't know if Evan Mobley will be as dominant inside in the NBA, but on the perimeter, shot blocking, defensively, he's gonna, obviously, again, he's got to get stronger, but he's got length and athleticism. And offensively, he's got, like you said, a skill set on the perimeter that's going to be really, really, really intriguing. It's going to take a little bit of time. I don't think he's going to come in right away and dominate, but that's the guy that came to mind was Ralph Sampson. And look, Ralph Sampson also did 4 years in college. So while Evan Mobley wasn't as dominant at USC as Ralph Sampson, Evan Mobley 4 years from now, would have averaged 30 at USC. So take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I don't mind that comparison, because I think both guys, when we think of Sampson, also, you think kind of more of a finesse player, and I think that with Mobley, could Mobley fill out and be something totally different? Yes, big guys, a lot of times they're more of what they want to be. Like, they could turn into whatever they want. It's really
Anthony Davis was finesse at Kentucky, and he became now he's almost like a real power forward.
Yeah, I mean, he can shoot threes, but I mean, he could really hammer you under the basket.
Yeah, he can dunk on guys. And, really kill you.
Yeah, so could Mobley be something like that? I mean, 100%. It's just I'm looking at who he is today, and if he continues on the track he's on, what is the most likely, end result? And to me, Sampson is a good comparison, because offensively, I think the finesse game is similar. But then also, I think he's much more akin to Sampson defensively than he is Bosh. Bosh was a good defender and a good shot blocker. Mobley could be a great shot blocker. Mobley could be a guy who leads the league in blocks.
Right.
He's really quick off his feet. He has shown the ability to, switch off and guard smaller guys in certain spots. They did zone a lot. So, one thing I saw that was shocking to me was that he only averaged like 1.8 fouls a game. Sometimes you wonder, okay, if these, is he getting hit in the zone? Is that why? I don't know. But when he was put on the smaller guys on switches or in certain spots, he did the job. So I think in that standpoint, Ralph Sampson was a great athlete, very, very agile, very mobile for a guy who was 7'4". That aspect of being that kind of quarterback in the paint, I think very similar in that regard. But what do you guys think of these comps? Some interesting ones. Me and Kendall, we don't talk about our comps before we talk about them. So he surprised me with some. I'm sure I surprised him with some of mine. What do you guys think of these players? Make sure you guys leave a comment on how you would compare the players we talked about today: Jalen Green, Jalen Suggs, Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, Jonathan Kuminga. Make sure you leave a comment. If you like this video, of course, give us a like, and make sure you subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media, where we'll be doing plenty of NBA draft coverage for the next 2 months. So make sure you keep it locked here. That'll do it for now. For Kendall, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.